Imagine this. You're driving through Alabama late at night. Nothing around you except trees, darkness, and those long, empty roads that feel like they go on forever. That's exactly where Mikayla and her boyfriend Adam were during a road trip. Everything was normal, until they spotted a woman on the side of the road. She's standing there alone, waving her arms, clearly trying to get someone to stop. Now, most people probably would have kept driving, but Adam was one of those genuinely kind people who always wanted to help. So he pulls over. The woman introduces herself as Yaz, and she tells them her car broke down at a campsite deeper in the woods. She says all she needs is a jump start. Simple enough. So Adam grabs the jumper cables, and they follow her off the main road into the forest. And before Adam gets out of the van, he quietly reaches into the back, grabs his handgun, and tucks it into his waistband. Eventually, they reach this little clearing. There's a car sitting there with the hood popped open, so they spend the next hour trying to jump this car. And nothing works. They keep trying and trying, but the engine never turns over. At this point, Mikayla's getting frustrated. She's tired, it's dark, they're in the middle of nowhere, and this whole thing is getting weird. So finally, she says, "Look, we tried. Is there anything else we can do?" And Yaz looks at them and says, "Yeah, put your hands up." Then she pulls out a gun. Just like that, the whole situation flips. Suddenly, Yaz is robbing them. She's taking their phones, emptying their pockets, demanding banking information. And according to Mikayla, Yaz seemed nervous, like she wasn't some experienced criminal, more like somebody trying very hard to act dangerous. Then, out of nowhere, Yaz lowers the gun slightly and goes, "Haha, I'm just playing with y'all." Huge mistake. The second her attention drops, Adam pulls his own gun and tells her to get on the ground. But instead of surrendering, Yaz panics. She fumbles with the gun. And boom! A shot fires into the dirt. That single gunshot sets everything off. Adam starts shooting. Yaz starts shooting back. Now there's gunfire exploding through the woods in every direction. Adam manages to hit Yaz multiple times. She drops to the ground. For 1 second, it seems like it's over. Then Adam says the words Mikayla never wanted to hear. "I'm shot." One of Yaz's bullets had hit him in the back. He collapses. Mikayla grabs her phone and calls 911, but they're deep in the forest. Emergency responders are at least half an hour away. Meanwhile, Yaz is bleeding too. She tries to run, but she can't even stand properly. And then she starts yelling, "Crystal! Crystal!" Now imagine hearing that in the middle of the woods after a shootout. And then someone actually appears. Another woman literally walks out of the trees. This is Crystal. She circles the scene, looking at Adam on the ground, looking at Yaz bleeding. Then she asks Yaz, "What do you want me to do?" And before anyone can react, she disappears back into the woods. Eventually, police and paramedics arrive. Adam is rushed for help, but he doesn't survive. While officers are talking to Mikayla, she tells them about the mysterious second woman who came out of nowhere. So police start searching the woods. About half a mile away, they discover something bizarre. A hidden campsite. Multiple tents. Almost like a little community living off-grid in the forest. And standing there is Crystal. Police order her to the ground. She complies. In the end, Yaz was sentenced to 35 years in prison for Adam's death. Crystal received life in prison after prosecutors said she helped plan the robbery. And Mikayla? She survived the whole thing and later shared the story publicly online. All because one couple stopped to help someone on a dark road in Alabama. One night, Sarah is hanging out with her boyfriend, who we'll just call Jorge. They're at home together, drinking a little wine, listening to music, and just enjoying a quiet evening. Nothing unusual, just a couple spending time together. As the night goes on, things get a little silly. They're laughing, joking around, and eventually they decide to play a game of hide and seek. You know, the kind of idea that only sounds funny after a few drinks. At some point, they spot a large suitcase sitting in the house, and somebody gets the idea that Jorge should climb inside it as part of the game. So Jorge squeezes himself into the suitcase. Sarah zips it closed. They laugh, because honestly, it's ridiculous. Then the game ends, or at least Sarah says it does. According to her story, she and Jorge had both been drinking, and after a while she simply went upstairs to bed. She believed Jorge would be able to get himself out of the suitcase whenever he wanted, so she falls asleep. Hours pass. The next morning, Sarah wakes up and notices Jorge isn't beside her. At first, she doesn't think much of it. Then she remembers the suitcase. Suddenly, she rushes downstairs. She finds the suitcase. She opens it, and inside is Jorge. He's unresponsive. He's not breathing. Sarah panics. She calls 911. Emergency responders arrive, but it's too late. Jorge is dead. Police begin investigating, and Sarah tells them essentially the same story. It was a game. It was an accident. She went to bed. She thought he could get out on his own, and for a while that's the story everyone hears. But then investigators discover something unexpected. Videos. Videos recorded on Sarah's own phone, and according to prosecutors, those videos tell a very different story. So let's rewind. Sarah and Jorge are drinking together. They're laughing, they're joking around. And yes, Jorge gets inside the suitcase. Sarah zips it shut. At first it seems like harmless fun, but then Jorge starts asking to be let out. He calls Sarah's name. He asks again. And again. According to the videos, Sarah doesn't unzip the suitcase. Instead, she continues recording. At one point, Jorge says he can't breathe. Prosecutors say Sarah responds by bringing up past arguments and accusations of cheating. The exchange continues. Jorge remains trapped inside, and eventually the videos end. What happens next becomes the central question of the case. Prosecutors argue that Sarah knowingly left Jorge trapped in the suitcase and went upstairs to sleep, leaving him unable to escape. The defense would later argue that she never intended for him to die, but investigators believed the phone recordings contradicted her original account. Investigators arrested her and charged her with second-degree murder. Only Sam was awake. 20 years old, angry, humiliated. Online, he called himself SYKO Sam, an aspiring horrorcore rapper who spent years building a persona around violence, darkness, and insanity. On the internet, he looked confident, dangerous, like somebody out of a twisted music video. But when he finally flew from California to Virginia to meet Emma in person, the illusion shattered almost immediately. Emma had imagined someone charismatic and edgy. Instead, Sam was shy, awkward, emotionally immature, and very different from the photos he used online. She tried to be polite, but Sam noticed her disappointment instantly. Still, they went to the horrorcore festival together with Mel. Music blasted. Fans screamed lyrics into the night. But throughout the event, Emma kept distancing herself from him. Eventually they argued, and during that argument, Emma broke up with him. That moment destroyed something inside Sam. By the time they returned to Emma's mother's house that night, he was silently boiling with resentment. Emma went to bed. Mel slept downstairs on the couch. Emma's mother went to her room. Sam stayed awake. Around 3 a.m., he got up and wandered through the dark house until he found a ball-peen hammer. Then he walked toward Mel. She was asleep on the couch when he raised the hammer over his head and brought it down directly onto her skull with full force. The first blow crushed her head so severely she never woke up. Then he walked upstairs to Emma's mother's room. She was asleep when he attacked her too, smashing the hammer repeatedly into her head and face until she was dead in bed. Finally, he entered Emma's room. Emma was asleep under her blankets when Sam stood over her with the hammer. And then he did the same thing to her. The girl he claimed to love died in her own bedroom. 3 people were dead within minutes, and somehow the most disturbing part was what happened next. Sam stayed in the house for days. He ate food there, slept there, walked around the bodies. Then concern started spreading outside the house. Mel's mother became worried after days without hearing from her daughter, so she contacted police and requested a welfare check. Officers arrived. Sam answered the door calmly. Somehow, despite multiple corpses inside, officers didn't immediately realize what had happened. They questioned him briefly and left. But Mel's mother knew something was terribly wrong, so she called Emma's father and asked him to personally check on everyone. He drove over to the house and walked inside. At first, everything seemed strangely quiet. Then Sam came up behind him, holding the same hammer. He swung it hard into the back of Emma's father's head. The blow cracked his skull and dropped him instantly. Now, there were 4 bodies in the house. Afterward, Sam stole Emma's father's car and headed toward the airport, planning to escape back to California. But on the way, he crashed the vehicle into a ditch. A police officer responded to the accident. Without realizing who Sam was, the officer simply wrote him a ticket, while a tow truck driver gave him a ride to the airport. Meanwhile, police finally returned to the house for a second welfare check. Inside, they discovered the bodies of Emma, her mother, Mel, and Emma's father, all beaten to death with blunt force trauma. A statewide alert went out for SYKO Sam. Then the officer from the roadside crash realized the suspect description matched the strange young man he had just helped hours earlier. Police rushed to the airport, and there was Sam, asleep in the terminal, waiting for his flight as though nothing had happened. He was arrested immediately. At trial, he pleaded guilty and received multiple life sentences. In the end, the violent horrorcore image Sam spent years pretending to be online became horrifyingly real, and 4 innocent people paid for it with their lives.